what do I need right now? This is what I call the reparenting question, because you get to reparent yourself here.
Okay.
and sort of be like a parent. And sometimes you need to just simply get a glass of water. Sometimes you need to stop checking email. Sometimes you need to turn off your phone. Sometimes you need to say, you know what, I need to go for a walk. Sometimes you see, I need to muscle through this project and just really focus hard, then do blank. But the idea is that you start to gain awareness around your feelings. And over time, this will make you so much more productive as a business owner.
Running a successful business often means dealing with stress, burnout, and exhaustion. That's why prioritizing your mental health at work is one of the most important decisions you'll ever make. Hi, I'm Leanna Lee.
I'm Mike Veny, and this is BetterMental. Join us as we share tools, tips, and strategies to help you build better systems for health and business growth.
Ready?
Let's get to work.
Welcome back to BetterMental. My name is Mike Veny, and I'm here with my lovely co-host from Illinois, Leanna Lee.
Hi, Mike. Oh, it's so good to be back in person. I'm seeing your lovely face.
Yes, we're not
Oh, God.
sitting at computers over Zoom. I mean, it was great that we had it, but I'm glad that we're here. And you know, the pandemic has been so stressful. And that's why I'm glad we're talking today, because we are going to be talking about stress as part of a 3-part series. In this episode, we're talking about managing stress. And in the next one, it will be exhaustion. And in the third one, it's burnout. And this is important because I believe that language is important when we talk about things. And people just throw it out there and say, well, I'm stressed, or I'm burned out, or I'm exhausted, sometimes as if they mean the same thing. And I think it's really important to distinguish the difference between each and what happens when you don't address one. For example, stress is your body's response to stimuli in the environment. Exhaustion is when you've had way too much stress and you're tired all the time. And burnout is just when you can't do anything anymore. So we're going to start with stress today. And I wanted you to tell us a little about stress from your perspective.
Yeah. So what exactly is it? It's one of those kind of arbitrary concepts that a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists are just still trying to figure out how to define, right? Many people see it as a negative. It comes with negative connotations, right? Oh, I'm so stressed out. This is stressful. That's not really the whole story. It's actually supposed to be a neutral term. So as you said, stress is the body's response to stimuli. So stimuli is kind of any change, any circumstance, any situation that happens to us. So, and if you think about it, there are a million points in your day when something changes, and that comes up with business too every day. There's these millions of little decisions you have to make. And so everything kind of starts with stress, if you think about it, because we have all of these stimuli coming at us and we have to make a decision one way or another. But what makes it stressful is once you're faced with this decision, you're faced with this situation or circumstance, your body and brain have to decide, is this a threat or is it a challenge? And then that's kind of, if you interpret it as a threat, then your body is like, you go into this like fight or flight mode. You have this adrenaline kick, things start turning on and you're like, your muscles get all bunched up and you're ready for this threat, to take on this threat. But I mean, as a challenge, there's emotion with that challenge too. You're facing something head on, you're overcoming something. And over time, that can also take its toll. So stress can motivate us to different types of actions, good and bad actions, or decisions, let's say, but they can also come from both positive and negative experiences. So there are both negative and positive types of stress. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. Can you elaborate on that? I'm just curious for what's positive stress?
Yeah. So positive stress is called eustress, and it basically translates as good stress. And that's basically, so I'll use an example. So say you go on vacation, right? And that's a good thing. It's a positive thing. You're excited about it. But if you are bombarded with all of these decisions and you have like all of these new experiences and you have all these decisions to make and you have this itinerary, at the end of the vacation, you had a great time, but you may be really tired and think, okay, well, now I need a vacation from my vacation because your body has just experienced all these new stimuli. Maybe you've been to a new country. Maybe you went whitewater rafting. Whatever the case may be, it was all this new stuff that you're not used to, all of the stimuli, and your body is just really tired. So that's kind of an example of a good thing. And I mean, winning an award, doing a speaking engagement, that's something I'd love to hear your perspective on. But it doesn't have to be like oh no, this terrible thing happened to me. Now I'm stressed out. It can be a lot of good things that have happened. But your body is like, I'm really tired of responding to this stuff. I just need a break. So that's kind of a way of describing that. And then the negative version of that is distress. So there's distress and eustress. There's also like internal and external stressors, right? So take something like COVID-19. That was a great example of an external stressor because you have all the stimuli coming in, all of these new restrictions, the lockdowns, the visceral kind of reaction to what's going on the news, like, and I would say a lot of us perceived that as a threat because the pandemic is a threat. So you have all of this stuff coming into your brain and you're having to make these decisions. You're having to face these new challenges each day, and that kind of wears on you over time. And then, sometimes if you're in social situations, the pressure of constantly being on, of being social, in that can also, because that's a million little decisions. You have to interpret facial expressions, micro expressions. You have to remember kind of social etiquette. So that's kind of another situation that could go either way. It could be a great event, but it still may leave you tired and exhausted afterwards because you've been constantly, you've been on the whole time. So that's kind of how I see stress. It's just like being on, like you're turning on up a dial a little bit. So, but yeah, it's just kind of a fascinating state because if you think about it, we just kind of deal with this every day on some level, but it's also still a concept that we don't really know a lot about.
That's so interesting. It's funny that, as we're talking, I'm looking at the recorder that we're recording with because we are live. Again, we're not doing this over the internet, which is really great. It's just so much different. But prior to hitting record, we were worried because the recorder was having some issues with turning on and stuff like that. I'm looking at it right now to make sure it's still working. and this episode's going to come out.
Talking about stress.
Yeah. So, I was feeling a little bit of stress as we were going to be talking about stress. But yes, when we're faced with a stimulus, change in circumstance or situation, this can mean even like moving. Mm-hmm. That's an example of good stress. You're excited to move into your new place, but you've got to move. And moving can be very stressful. Some examples of stimuli as a business owner. Oh, so many different things. Maybe it's that email from that one client. You just see their name pop up in your email and that
your
can...
blood pressure spikes a little bit.
Blood pressure spikes. Or maybe it's a deadline that you're stressing about, that you're constantly thinking about. Maybe it's the fact that you're struggling with cash flow. Mm-hmm. And you're thinking about that. You're trying to be present.
But remember, it's not always negative experiences.
Right. It's not
Maybe
always...
you got a huge payment and you're like, okay, now what do I do with this?
Yes, I'm going through that right now, actually. I have had...
like good problem to have.
Yeah.
Stress.
I'm going through the busiest month of my speaking career right now as we're recording this. And I am like having to be on like 4 days a week. Mm-hmm. I am grateful for it. The business bank account is grateful for it. But at the same time, it's like you said before, I have to be on. There's so many things I'm thinking about. Mm-hmm. Even as we're doing this, there are like little things in my mind. It's like, wait, we got to make sure we do this later and write this down. So those are some examples of things, an email from a client. But just remember, like even the alarm clock in the morning waking you up, that's a stimuli of some type. Mm-hmm. And so that's a challenge. So, all the types of stress can lead you to feel overwhelmed and you start to lose focus and it affects your productivity. So this is what you would call the de-stress, not the eustress. Mm-hmm. That de-stress is really what we're focusing on here. And it becomes a problem over time because if it's prolonged, it will take a serious toll on your health, on your body, your mind. causing all sorts of health problems and lead to exhaustion, which we're going to be talking about in the next episode. But then it's compounded by another thing in my life, my own mental health.
Yes.
So I'm a business owner, but at the same time, I battle major depression, anxiety, and obsessive compulsive disorder. So you put that together and we've got a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you deal with mental health challenges on top of like natural day-to-day stress, whether it's the stress of being a business owner or the stress of life, personal decisions that come up, that kind of compounds the issue, right? So stress may look a little different. I kind of think of it as, so anxiety is this sort of the stress without the stimuli. You don't need any stimuli to feel anxious about something. It's just constantly there. Your brain has kind of has forged pathways in a way that just kind of run on its own, like without any interference from you. It's just kind of being anxious without you doing anything about it at all. So when you add these stressors, it sort of amplifies the problem, at least for me. And that's kind of my experience is that I didn't need any reason to be anxious to begin with, but now I have these visceral, actual things to be concerned about. And then my brain latches onto that. And I'm like, okay, this is definitely feeling like more of a threat than a challenge. Because I think as someone with anxiety, you're not like, oh, stressful thing. That's a challenge I can overcome. It's more like, oh God, not again, not another one. So for me, the feeling of being stressed is pretty common. In my day-to-day life, with anxiety, stress is something I constantly have to manage. And I feel like I'm constantly chasing like that high of being calm.
I love that. Say that again.
Constantly chasing that high of being calm. Because, when you think about if you have anxiety and you just have this moment of like peace and quiet, it's like, I want to relive that constantly over and over again. It feels so good. It's just like eye of the storm, which now that I think about it is probably a bad way of expressing that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
But I love that. So I do not need the stressors to be anxious, but when I find that peace and I can manage it properly, it just like,
I love that. But let me just ask you this. So go back to your stress. Let's just say this is like a typical work day in your business. You wake up and you start doing work. What does it look like when you're at the computer or whatever you're doing and stressed?
Okay, so for me, that usually comes, I think of it like a car pileup of like small decisions or small things that have gone wrong. So it could be, I wake up, maybe I woke up a little late and I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm fine. I can be flexible today. It's cool. I'm just going to have my tea. I'm going to sit for a little bit. And then maybe I'll just start work a little faster. And so that's like a first little hint. And it couldn't mean anything, but it sort of sets me up for the rest of the day. So the next thing could be that I just have a lot going on that day. And I'm like, okay, so I woke up a little later than I wanted to. I have a lot going on. Okay, this is fine. I can manage it. I'm good. I'm just going to do this and this and this. We're just going to take care of ourselves. It'll be fine. Then, oh my God, right? I have these phone calls I have to do. Okay, so that my blood pressure is like muscles clenching a little bit. Blood pressure is going up. Like, damn it, I hate having a long work day plus multiple phone calls. I know I'm going to be short on energy after this. And then like maybe there's like a final thing. So maybe a client comes back with some last minute edits and like they didn't like what I did, where I went with the piece. Or, it could be something ridiculous like I find some food gone bad in the fridge, or my clothes are dirty and I haven't had time to do laundry, or the dishes are piling up or something. It just feels like, again, that pile up. And then I'm like, all right, that's it. And it's just this snowball effect. And it's small things. And again, a couple of them I can probably handle. Over time, as I've learned to manage stress a bit better, I can like take on, it's like juggling balls in the air. You can take on a couple before it becomes, a little bit difficult. And then eventually it's just too many for me. And then I'm overwhelmed. And, with the way my anxiety works, if I'm not careful, anxiety heads into a depressive that cyclone of depressive thinking and feeling. So I really have to like stop the anxiety before it heads down that path, because that's not great. So yeah, that's kind of how that works for me. What about you? Do you relate to that at all? Does your experiences look similar? Because I think our experiences with anxiety are pretty similar, but I think yours manifests slightly differently to mine. I have like very physical reactions to anxiety, like stomach aches and that sort of thing. What about you?
Yeah, I love the car pile up. that describes it.
Picture.
Let me just tell you about this morning. So this morning, I'm getting ready. I knew you and I had to record. I had to do some other things, check some emails, respond to some things. One of the things that I do in my business, I don't know if I've shared this with you. When a client works with me, hires me, I always send them a handwritten thank you card. And so
yeah, I think I did know that. Yeah.
And I just think it's a nice gesture to show gratitude, to send love out there into the world, because I want them to know how much I appreciate it. And it gives me a moment to think about, what I enjoyed about the experience with them. So it's like positive energy going through the air. And so I had to do some of those, but I was getting caught up in all of them and thinking about what to say. And then we had to record the podcast today, what we're doing right now. And I had to, quickly think about what we were going to do and, what I was going to say and stuff like that. We also had the logo. We're looking at, designing this new logo, which by the time you're listening to this, it's done. So I'd love you to go to our website and check it out. Let us know what you think of the new logo. and so all these things at once. And even the fact of like, I haven't seen you since, before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And, I'm coming here and driving here and I'm thinking, oh my God, like, what's that going to be like? Is Leanna going to come up to me in a mask and be like, I can't hug you? Like all this stuff, it's going to be awkward. So my mind's like thinking about all these things. And it was to the point where like, it goes right into anxiety at some point. It starts becoming this downward spiral.
Mm-hmm.
I always talk about rabbit holes, like in the Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, going down a rabbit hole. That's what starts to happen. But here's where it gets to trouble for me. And I don't know if any of you out there feel the same way, but I start creating stories in my head that aren't true. I start like creating.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
I start creating some magical stories about life, about, everything going on in my life, my family. And it just really becomes a nuisance because I can't get work done. I cannot get work done, or I'm struggling just to send that one email. So it really becomes problematic for me. But, here's the cool thing about this episode. The reason we're doing it is not to complain about our stress. That will stress you out if you have to hear that. We've got some tips for you to manage your stress. And the first one I want to give you is to do your best to identify it within yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, stress can bring up all sorts of feelings, maybe no feelings at all. But sometimes it's actually not stress that you're feeling. It might be anxiety. And if you're not in touch with what's going on inside of you, you're not going to know. And this is a process, not a destination. But I wanted to share with you 3 questions that I recommend you ask yourself throughout the day. And I'm going to break down the why of each and what it means. One is, what am I feeling? The second question is, where is it located? And the third question is, what do I need right now? Now, let me start with the first question. What am I feeling? Oftentimes when I ask myself that, I don't know the answer. And that's fine. You might not know either. Actually, as you're listening to this, think about it. What are you feeling right now? Just see if you can just tune into that, what's going on inside you. Now, when you ask that, though, you start to gain awareness around your feelings. That's the important part of the question. Not to get an answer, to gain awareness. The second question is, where is the feeling located? There's a book that has taken over the world of mental health called The Body Keeps the Score. It talks about how we store trauma and emotions in our body. And oftentimes, if you feel something somewhere, like you were pointing to your stomach before, that's an important indicator of what's coming up for you. For instance, when I'm angry, I feel it in my chest. I can point to that one spot. I always feel it in my chest. It will improve your awareness. And the third question, what do I need right now? This is what I call the reparenting question, because you get to reparent yourself here and sort of be like a parent. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you need to just simply get a glass of water, Sometimes you need to stop checking email. Sometimes you need to turn off your phone. Sometimes you need to say, you know what, I need to go for a walk. Sometimes you see, I need to muscle through this project and just really focus hard, then do blank. But the idea is that you start to gain awareness around your feelings. And over time, this will make you so much more productive as a business owner.
And I think over time is the key phrase there, because what Mike is describing is kind of an advanced, I want to say advanced technique, because I think we all have some basic level awareness of our feelings. At least I hope we do. And if not, there are probably other things that we're working through right now, which is, totally fine. But gaining an awareness of your own feelings and checking in with yourself does take practice. And I feel like people like us, like you and I, Mike, who deal with mental health issues every day, it's something that we learn to do over time. Like you and I have had a lot of practice over the past 10, 15, and in your case, like 20 plus years, more than that, like 25, 30 years, I think.
Oh, I mean, I've been battling this stuff for my whole life.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it's like over decades, you kind of gain awareness. So this is not something that comes just immediately. And because of that, I think it's good to have kind of symptoms of stress, just keep them in mind, because, as Mike said, it could be stress that you're feeling. You're just like the awareness is to get a sense of whether it is stress or some other emotion. So are you angry? Are you frustrated? Are you sad? Are you anxious? No, maybe I don't know. So am I stressed? How do I know that I'm stressed? So some symptoms you can keep in mind. So for me, I said mine is more visceral and physical. So physical symptoms can look like a headache, a stomach ache. You could have like a lack of energy, inability to kind of complete tasks. If you feel sick or you feel like you're getting sick, you get like those flu-like symptoms, that can be a sign of stress. Or on the anxiety end, things are speeding up, right? You're sweating, you have a rapid heart rate, like that could be a good sign of stress as well. Another for me, I find it a little bit hard to concentrate when I'm overwhelmed. Like things are starting to spin around in my head faster and faster, and that's that anxiety cyclone starting up there. And then if there's something that you're particularly stressed about, that one thing, you may be hyper focusing. So it's struggle to kind of be present in the moment, because all you can think about is that one thing that isn't going right, that one decision that you have to make. And that sort of leads to, now I can't relax. Now I can't de-stress, I can't unwind. And then, maybe you have difficulty sleeping. You have difficulty just like getting out of it, turning off business mode, separating your work and personal life. And then if you're stressed about something in your personal life, maybe you're struggling to switch back into business mode and be productive, as you said, because it can really wreck your productivity. So just kind of keep those in mind. And yes, other feelings you do have some of those symptoms with other feelings too. So it's not like a perfect, if I have a headache, I'm stressed out rather than angry. It's just, this is to just keep in mind, okay, so what am I feeling? I have a stomach ache. Oh, that's interesting. Did I eat something bad recently? No. Okay, so that may be either a feeling or stress. So that's like, it helps you like baby steps to like figure out what the fuck is going on. But then once you have a better idea, sort of you sort of tuned into that, and you have kind of a better idea of what kind of feeling it is, what kind of, am I stressed out? Then you can start to find the source of the stress, and that's our third tip. And I think we're going to start with you on that, Mike. You have some interesting kind of strategies for finding the source of your stress.
Yeah, there's a book that if you haven't read it, I encourage you to check out, called Getting Things Done. Great title for a book. And it's a very popular book on productivity. And the author, David Allen, talks about the fact that as you go about your day, we all have open loops on our mind. Even right now, as we're doing this recording, Leanna, both of us have things on our mind, little things rolling around in there. As you're listening to this, you've got things on your mind too. And when we can't gain any kind of control around those things, that can also cause stress. I mean, And that's just not just the, outer stimuli. That's like the internal stuff you're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the best ways to manage that is by doing what we call a brain dump. And a brain dump does not mean you turn your head to the side and try to hit yourself in the head and dump out your brain. Please don't do that. Basically, a brain dump is where you take a piece of paper and a pen and write down everything that's on your mind. And this is not just the stuff that you need to do. This means maybe you're obsessing about something that happened 20 years ago. Write it down. Maybe you can't stop thinking about an idea that you want to do on vacation. Write it down. Maybe you're just pissed off at someone in your family. Write it down.
So you're like clearing space.
You're clearing space. And what happens is this.
Such a good idea.
When you see it on the piece of paper, I would love to tell you it takes away your stress. It doesn't do that. It makes it more manageable. And here's the thing. When you see it on the piece of paper, you can generally pick one thing and say, what can I do that's within my control for one of those things? And what it does is you start to take your power back. And that's so important when you're feeling overwhelmed. But you were talking about worry, right? And we were talking about that before.
Yeah. So my version of, I guess, your brain dump is more specific. So when I'm stressed out, I've learned to tell over time. So I have situational anxiety, which is a bit different to generalized anxiety. Usually there are specific steps that lead to me feeling anxious. And if I work backwards, I can identify most of them. There's still some generalized anxiety there. But I think my anxiety works a little bit more like stress because there are generally causes that you can point back to. With generalized anxiety in general, it's just kind of up there in your brain. There's not much you can do about it. So I have some of that on kind of a lower level, but mostly it's a situational thing where I just have I think of it as like a cup that gets just really full really quickly. And if I'm not good about turning off the tap, then I'm just going to get so lost in this metaphor. But anyway, so I have a low tolerance for stress, essentially. and anxiety, that's how my anxiety works. So what I do is a worry list. So it's kind of like your brain dump, but it's focused on what I am stressed about or frustrated about. So it's if there is a negative emotion attached to it, and kind of like you said, if you're spending time on it, it's taking up space in your brain, I write it down. So then there's usually a lot of things. It's either things that have been sort of slowly taking up space over a little bit of time, maybe for the last couple of weeks, like something's been on the back of my mind. And there's stuff that built up over time. Like I took you through a day that could end up being very stressful for me. So then I can write down all of those things and say, okay, so it started, alarm clock. Yeah, I woke up late. Then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. So I write that all down and I'm like, okay, like you, I ask myself, what can I do? And sometimes there is a solution. Maybe I can reschedule something. If it's bad, maybe I'll cancel or reschedule one of those calls. Maybe I will ask for more time for a project. But it depends on kind of how I'm feeling that day and where my energy is at. But that's kind of where I start. What can I do about what's on this list? And sometimes, again, with awareness, it's a trial and error process, and it's something that you learn over time. So sometimes I don't have the luxury of being able to name all of my stressors. So I do something called a gut check. So I will ask myself questions. So I think most of you know by now. If you don't, then I'll tell you. I'm a birth parent. So I placed my daughter for adoption when she was at birth. And I am a part of this birth parent group called the On Your Feet Foundation, which is a fantastic support system for birth parents. And I attend their conferences every year. So one of the things we learned at these conferences when it comes to mental health is gut checks. So it helps you identify the source of your stress by asking yourself these questions like, is it this? Is it that? And you start with the universal, right? So it could be something like, is it work? Is it my husband Emerson? Is it my family? Is it money? And then from there, I get more specific. Okay, so it's money. So I usually feel like a twinge because, like I said, my anxiety is a little bit more visceral. So I do feel it in my stomach. And so if I feel a twinge, like a little bit of a cramp. I'm like, all right, it's money. So was it the fact that my client payment's running late? There's a twinge. Is it this? Is it that? So it could be a bunch of things, but often by asking myself those questions, I get it down to specifics, and then that's when I can make my worry list and be like, all right, what next? How do I do something about this?
You just described the magic 8-ball.
The magic 8-ball
That I used to have as a kid. You would ask the ball a question and you just turn it over. And it would, signs point to yes. And it's like, we would play with this. It's not real. It's not a real magic 8-ball. It just, randomly puts answers to questions because of the thing floating in the liquid. But that's a really cool system that you have because you get to really just check in. And I love that. And you know what I also love about that? I'm going to start doing that, by the way. I really am. Like, I'm learning so much from you in this episode right here. So thank you so much for all this. But what I like about it, and we're going to go back to this in many other episodes, is that it gets you in touch with your physical body and the stress. It's not just in your mind. I know the name of the show is BetterMental, but remember that when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about thoughts, feelings, and behavior, even though we use the word mental. So I just think that's really important. But I wanted to give you just a quick pro tip if you're listening that you can use if you're beyond overwhelmed. And what you can do is do a brain dump or worry list and have someone type down or write down what you are talking about. They can ask you questions. And I was just wondering if you and I could do a quick one right now for me because I have a lot going on.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could actually just take a few minutes to type and maybe ask me some questions as I tell you about what's on my mind, and maybe you'll help me be less stressed.
Okay. So what do you think? What do you think you're stressed about right now?
Well, I got a lot to do between today and tomorrow. I know we got some episodes to record, a photo shoot. I've got a dinner tonight, but also email and work stuff.
Okay. What about getting the stuff done today is stressing you out? Are you concerned about timing? Are you concerned about getting it done? Are you concerned about being there for people? Like, what do you think?
I'm concerned about being prepared for my episodes. To be honest with you.
Well, what we could do to solve that is we could go through each episode before we record it.
And I
Maybe that will help.
Maybe.
This is not at all how you should necessarily respond. It's an inside joke because we often argue about how prepared we should be for episodes. So I'm like, maybe if you prepare beforehand, you won't be stressed right now. But
that's an example, though. What we're doing, this kind of dialogue, though, is an example of what you can do with someone when they're stressed. Try not to laugh at them.
No, right. So you're starting with, okay, so when you ask, what do you think you're stressed about? Then usually what they'll answer with first is the top things that come to mind, like the things that are really pressing on their brain. And that may not be all that they're stressed about, but it's good to start somewhere because they've got kind of the most obvious ones. Because you're talking about the ones that are happening right now today, or just in the future. Things that you're dealing that have been in front of you recently, and you may have other stuff that you're stressed about, like within the past couple weeks or couple months or even years that you've been holding on to, but we're not there yet. We're just dealing with the present because you're managing the symptoms. It's less preventative. It's more management. So then I ask, okay, well, why? What is it about that is stressing you out? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? So you're trying to get into the core of, because these are tasks that you're stressed about, but there is reasoning behind it. Maybe it's a lack of preparation that you're concerned about. I asked, is he afraid of not being there, being present, which is something that a lot of people with mental health challenges, that's a struggle, is staying in the present moment. Time management, that's something I often stressed about. So I always ask people about that because I'm like, how do I get from one thing to the next? So just keep that in mind as you are helping someone, or if you need someone's help to identify the sources of your stress. Like, what is on your mind? Why do you think that's on your mind? And then if you need someone to go through, like, is it money issues? Is it work? Is it family? Is it relationships? Is it travel? Like, sometimes those keywords can generate a visceral actual response. So like, you could feel like a little short of breath. You could have a little twinge in your stomach. You could your hands could get tingly, or you could feel a little bit cold, or you could suddenly feel like you need a drink of water. Any sort of physical response to that is usually a good clue. Like some people have like sharp little pains, like, between their eyes or behind their ear or something. But your body will react because that's what stress is your body's reaction to stimuli. So if you are stressed about something, your body will tell you. So you're kind of reverse engineering the stress. You're being like, okay, you're giving me this, and now I'm all uptight, and now you're going to tell me why, because that's what you do. So that is, I kind of see that as reverse engineering the stress. And yeah, so if it's a process of elimination, but it's also a trial and error process. So it does take time to build up that awareness, that ability to identify feelings and identify symptoms. If you have someone who can help you out with that, or if you can use those keywords and like write down what's going on with you, you're in a much, much better place to find solutions and manage it better. BetterMental.
And with that, I just want to remind you that owning a business comes with a lot of stress. Leanna and I are both business owners. We're used to this, and it's one of the reasons why we are doing this show here. And recognizing and managing it can set you up to run a better company, lead a better team, handle day-to-day issues, and just make more money. Mm-hmm. So true, yeah. There's a really good reason to invest in your mental wellness. And I just wanted to share a quote from Spider-Man. Leanna gave me permission to...
I'm sorry, I know the quote. I love this quote. It just...
No.
Go for it. I'm sorry.
No, I can't even say it straight now. It's with great power comes great responsibility. I learned that in Spider-Man. And you know what? If you're a business owner, you're in a position of power, and there's a responsibility that you have to run your business. And
well, not just that. You have a responsibility to yourself.
Yourself
right?
too, yeah.
Because you're not only the business owner, you are the manager, you are the CFO, you're the CMO, you are all the employees if you work for yourself by yourself. So you have a responsibility to all those theoretical business people in your head. Mm-hmm. All of those employees of the company live in a single body, and that is you. And so if you aren't managing yourself and your stress and your mental health properly, then your business just falls flat. It cannot work properly. You can't show up for your clients. You can't show up for your work. You can't show up for yourself. So that's why it's so important, because it literally, how you show up to work that's what you have to deal with. That's the business you've got. That's the baseline that you're working with. So if you can manage that stress and you can kind of put those systems in place, this is like any business system you put in place is just for the health of the entire company being you.
Yeah. No, I love that. And also remember, it's about your life outside of work too.
Yes, absolutely.
You want to be able to show up for that, and you've got a responsibility. So, it's in your power. One of the things that I'm really enjoying about this episode is the fact that, this is all about you. You've got choices you can make, and we encourage you to really listen and take some of the ideas and work with them. And with that, what's coming up in the next episode, Leanna?
Yeah, so we're doing a 3-part series about management, basically. And we started with stress today. The next episode is basically the next step. If you haven't been able to manage stress properly, or if you have been stressed for a while, guess what's going to come next? Exhaustion. So that our next episode will talk about exhaustion, what that looks like, where that comes from, what that looks like for us day to day, and then how we manage it on a daily basis. And then our 3rd episode is about burnout, which we will talk about next time. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. This was such a great episode, I think, to come back on. And Lord knows we need it. It's like still with all this shit going on worldwide, it's just great to sit down in person again. Finally, after 15 months or something ridiculous, it's great to see you in person again and to talk about, well, I don't know if I would chosen to talk about stress like the first thing that I see you in person to talk about, but it's great to have this conversation with you again.
It is. Well, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time, and take care of your mental wellness.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. You can learn more about the resources we mentioned or connect with special guests by checking out today's show notes at bettermental.fm.
And if you liked this episode, keep in touch by following us on your favorite podcast app. In the meantime, we'd love to hear what you think about the show. So DM or mention us on Twitter at BetterMentalFM.
Thanks again, and see you next time.